All right, welcome. I'm Kathy Zender Wilson, Chair of the Human Relations Board and Ward 4 City Commissioner. You are tuning into the September 21st, 2022 Human Relations Board, and I welcome you here where our focus is on increasing constructive communication among all people, regardless of actual or perceived race, ethnicity, color, religion, national origin, sex, age, height, weight, marital status, physical or mental disability, family status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or socioeconomic status. So welcome, everyone. I appreciate you being here and your continued dedication to this important work that we're doing. We have a rather full agenda. And I have a feeling we're not quite at quorum yet. Am I correct, Alicia? Yeah, I believe just based on the numbers that I'm seeing that's the case. So can we hold off on roll call and come back to that in a minute? Or does that need to come first? Is Alicia there? Hey, Jen.
Hello.
Got it. So, oh, Alicia, you're muted.
Yes. Am I unmuted now? I've had a little technical difficulty there. Yes, we can wait and do roll call. That's fine.
Okay. All right. We'll wait on roll call and approval of minutes until we get more folks to join us. And Alicia, do we have any communications or committee reports?
We do not.
Okay, thank you. So our first matter of old business today is the community survey for the Citizens Review Board. And I want to give a huge shout out to Jessica from the city, Jessica Vanderkolk, because she's helped us integrate the many points of feedback that we've received, including from city staff, the CRB work group, as well as from Chief. You should have received an email earlier today that gave you the document. I know that was last minute, and most of the folks on this call have full-time jobs that may not have allowed them to review it. But if you have any thoughts or comments, I welcome those. Before we get into the comments, I want to say from a logistical standpoint, our goal initially was to run the survey in the month of September. A lot of things got in the way of that, and I'd rather do this right than do it quickly. And right now, we're not taking a vote on it, but after today's meeting and we've gotten any of other feedback, we will finalize it, and then it's going to go for translation in both Burmese and Spanish before it goes live. So that will take potentially a week to 2 delay. And then what they're suggesting is that we actually run it early October to early November. And Jessica would manage all of that for us. So that's the logistics that I know. So anybody have any comments or thoughts based on their review of the survey if they've seen it?
I just have one comment, and I'm not sure in the greater community how big of a population we have, but I know I have a lot of Arabic speaking students.
Okay.
So I don't know if that might also be another translation that we actually have signage in our building that is also Arabic. So I know we have enough population in our high school. Yeah, so that might just be another.
Okay,
language.
Thank you for that. I'll bring that to Jessica's attention and ask her if there are others, because they should have a sense of the demographics and they might be able to determine translation needs based on that. Thank you. Welcome, Chris. Anybody else have an opportunity to review it and have any comments? Hello, Jeff.
I'm sorry, to review.
Yep. So we're reviewing so for those of you who just joined us, by email, you would have gotten the most current draft of the CRB survey. I'm just looking for any feedback that you might have. I did go over the logistics of it and that it's going to be pushed back slightly for a number of reasons, but after today is done and we've taken any last feedback, we're going to have it probably go live in 2 weeks or whenever the translation is complete. So given that you just received it today and that you might need a minute to review it, I'd ask that you send any thoughts, comments, or feedback about anything that you find that needs to be changed, something that might be missing. Send that to me by email by noon tomorrow. And then I can direct Jessica and say that we are confident that we've gotten the feedback that we need to move forward, if that's okay. Does that work for you, Chris? You're really big on my screen right now. I don't know what kind of setup I have on my Zoom, but like you're,
No. Sit back
I don't know
here.
if it's like on, it must be on speaker view or something because it's, oh yeah, there we go. Now everybody's equal. Okay.
Sounds good to me, Kathy.
All right, good. Last month, we had a interpretate live translation going on, live interpretation. It's interpretation if it's translation if it's written, right? Trying to get my language down correctly here. What we realized after we did that is that we did not have the mechanisms in place to really gauge whether or not it was actually being accessed. So the city staff has asked for just a gap this month. So you'll notice that VOSIS is not on this meeting to try and put the systems in place so that if we're going to invest in that, we're actually going to know whether or not it's being utilized. And so we should be back up, if not next month, the month after, but I will keep you abreast of any changes there. Obviously, our goal is accessibility. This is really kind of a pilot for the city to see if it works here. What are the other critical meetings or boards or committees that it would be beneficial for? I mean, in a perfect world, it would be every single one of them. That's just not really feasible because there are so many. I don't even know the number, but it's pretty significant for those of you who are aware of the number of boards and committees the city has. So I'm going to pause right there and ask Alicia to maybe take roll call because I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think
Do
we've
we
got.
have-
Yeah.
We do. We
Okay,
do.
good.
Okay, good afternoon. Pastor Hooper.
Let's see. Yes, Pastor Hooper, coming to you from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Herring? Absent. Chris Lucier?
President from Battle Creek,
Thank
City
you.
of Battle Creek.
Derek Freeman?
You may arrive
Absent.
late.
Okay, right now he's absent. Miss Austin?
Hi, and you're here, President from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Thank you. Mr. Cotton?
I'm here from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you, sir. Miss Gregor?
Hi, I'm here in Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. Commissioner Zenda Wilson?
Hi, I'm attending remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Miss Kip?
Attending remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward?
Attending remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you. Miss Ackley?
Hi, attending remotely from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. Miss Spencer?
Dina Spencer attending remotely from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. Miss Wardell?
Whitney Wardell attending remotely from Battle Creek, Michigan.
Thank you. We are all set. We have quorum.
And Commissioner Herring just arrived.
Oh, excellent. Commissioner Herring, are you joining us remotely from Battle Creek?
Yes, remotely from Battle Creek.
Thank you so much.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to just take a couple steps back. And before we move into the approval of minutes, I have some sad news to report, and that is Pam Lastly from our team had passed away unexpectedly in this past week. It's heartbreaking. We don't know a lot of details. If we learn any, we'll make sure that you receive information. But just if you can, keep her family in your thoughts, prayers, whatever energy you want to put out there for them. But we will miss her from this board for sure, and from this community, certainly. Okay, I'm going to shift us to minutes from last month. If you had an opportunity to review those, I would take a motion.
I moved, Chris Lucier moves to approve the minutes.
Hi, Kiona, second.
All right, thank you. So moved and supported. Any discussion? Seeing none, if you agree, please hands up or thumbs up on your screen.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Herring. Okay, it looks like that has passed. So the minutes from our August 17th meeting have been approved. We did not have any communications or committee reports. For those of you just joining us, we were just talking about the most current version of the survey draft for the CRB. You have it in your inboxes. please let us know by noon tomorrow by email. Let me know if you have any changes, because we're going to finalize it and it's going to be sent for translation in this week yet, in hopes that we can get it live within the next 10 days to 2 weeks. And then Chris, your hands up. Oh, was that just for the minutes? Oh, okay. All right, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the update on language services, we will not have live translation today, but we will have it in coming months. We're just trying to put together the support we need to make sure that we're measuring its impact and our reach. And so stay tuned on that end. And then I'm going to actually ask Chris to join me in this next conversation. In your package, you would have received some materials related to code compliance. And he and I had a chance to connect, I don't know if it was last week or one day recently, and kind of debrief from our last month's conversation in this group, and wanted to really kind of get our arms around we will always hear things from people in the community as it relates to code compliance. I think as long as there are people living in cities, there are people who complain about lots of things, right? That being one of them that is significant. And what we want to do is carve out what is it specific to this group, to this board, that is relevant and important for us to understand about code compliance's interaction with the community. Again, reminding us that our goal here is quality relationships between the community and the city services and city staff. So Chris, what might you add to that?
Well, so just to acknowledge that I'm wearing two hats here. One, as a board member who wants to see that we have conversations germane to our purpose. And then also as someone who, I'm a community development manager for the city of Battle Creek, which that's a division within community services, and code compliance is another division within community services. So I'm in really close proximity to code compliance. Also, one of my jobs for the city is doing neighborhood analysis. So I review a lot of data, collect a lot of data and review a lot of data, and do analysis using a lot of data from code compliance. And so just keep that in mind in terms of what I'm going to share. And I expressed this at the last meeting, and then subsequently in my conversation with Commissioner Zenda Wilson. There are lots of places where code compliance gets discussed, and neighborhood planning councils are a venue where every single month when they meet, code compliance is a regular discussion topic. We've had a lot of community conversations. We have a 4-person call center. Those conversations happen a lot. And some of those conversations don't feel very germane to me, to this board. Some of them feel very germane. I think last time I said, if we're focused on equity and making sure the code compliance is equitable, that seems like a very valuable conversation to have. And then we would actually bring some insight into that conversation that could be very valuable to a department or the community as a whole, or the city commission, I think. So what I proposed was that we maybe consider, explore that a little bit. What did members of the board want to get into? I personally was advocating that we stay focused around that. And then I did a little bit of research. I pulled together some materials from folks that we've worked with. The handout that was attached to the agenda is from the Center for Community Progress, who pretty much, when it comes to addressing blight, the reutilization of vacant land, code compliance falls under their wheelhouse, but they brought together a lot of the experts around the country to sort of address those kinds of issues. So we've been consulting with them for well over a decade. And if you look at, if you do a Google search around equitable code enforcement or code enforcement and fair housing, you're not going to find a lot of material. And what material you do find will not be much of a deep dive. But if you get into the Center for Community Progress, you're going to find loads and loads of material where they've explored this. So they've done like equity audits that are just focused on code compliance for multiple cities and have published those reports. And so those kinds of things would be available to us. This is a simple handout that I thought gave a little overview of sort of what they promote. And I don't know if maybe it makes sense to share a screen real quick so that we can all follow along.
Yeah, let me see if I have it open.
I have it open on my
Yeah.
screen. I don't know if I'm
Okay.
able to share or not.
All right, I think that the city will have to give you permission for that. Oh, you can. Okay, good.
So this was that piece. It just gives a little bit of an overview about what they use the term strategic code enforcement, which is what they promote. They define broadly includes all the elements involved in obtaining compliance from private property owners of vacant, abandoned, and deteriorated properties. Property ownership comes with important responsibilities, maintaining properties in compliance with local codes. They go a little more into sort of what do they mean by strategic code enforcement, and they lay out sort of 3 areas. One is equitable code enforcement, which recognizes differences in circumstances and provides the necessary support and protections to property owners in more vulnerable positions. Equitable code enforcement mitigates individual hardship while still working to improve property conditions. They talk about the need for effective code enforcement, which results in improved properties that meet local standards. Property owners might comply voluntarily, or local governments can take action to abate a nuisance and recover the cost or transfer ownership to a new responsible owner. And then they talk about efficient code enforcement, and that's code enforcement that achieves compliance in the shortest period of time and at the lowest possible cost.
Chris, it feels like the space where this board would best align is in that equitable portion, right? Like, do we know if or what could you share about what the code and our code team does, what tools they have at their disposal, what training they go through to ensure that they are able to do that? Because, you know, it's not enough to say it if there aren't the tools, and I'm suggesting they're probably there, and it would be helpful if we knew those.
Yeah, so if you look at when they do an equity audit of various cities and their code enforcement, they have a number of criteria for evaluating, which I think might be useful for us to look at if we did that. And so they have like a list of recommended steps, like what are the ways that you can implement code to sort of build in processes that ensure that it's equitable. And I think there's some areas actually where we do pretty well. So I think the first piece is that'll help us understand like that world a little bit, and sort of what are the kinds of options that are available to communities. And I think if there are things that we're doing well, we can set those aside. If there's things that we don't feel like our community is doing well, that's where we can probe. Or if there's places where we don't feel like we know enough, I think that's where we can ask code compliance to come forward and sort of talk to us. So like, hey, where are we at? And I'm not necessarily saying that we shouldn't have information about how effective or efficient our code enforcement is. I'm just saying it just seems like we'd probably want to focus our energies there. But the second page had some criteria of like what they say successful code enforcement looks like. So I was just thinking if we were going to have code enforcement come talk to us about it, maybe we ask them to review this and maybe align some of their talking points around this. Like, what are the things in these areas where they're, talk about their work in these areas. So maybe we can at least get from them. And I was thinking also as an exercise for us, maybe, and I could put this together, but maybe we could maybe start off by rating how we feel our code compliance does in these areas on the front end. Maybe do some learning, like hear from them, ask questions, explore, do a scan of some other things, whatever we want to do. And then when we get done, sort of rate them again, which I think would help us figure out like, okay, we've heard from them, but what do we still think are areas where we need some improvement or we'd like to know more, which would give them some direction. So instead of having a really broad ranging conversation, we're able to go, where are the areas where we really want to focus? That's what I was thinking. And where we really want to give them some direction or feedback, or encourage them or ask them to take some action. I don't know, that was just a brainstorm of how we could use this document and how Center for Community Progress sort of thinks about it as like sort of a framework for exploring our code enforcement locally and then providing them some feedback about where we think some additional work might be helpful.
Thank you, Chris. I didn't realize I was actually muted. I'd love to open it up for discussion. Thoughts on what Chris is proposing?
Paushan here. I like what Chris said in terms of getting some of the committee to communicate with us, because, again, reading what they say about equitable enforcement and knowing what that actually looks like would be something that I'd be interested in. So what is the support if that is being provided if somebody needs it? What does it look like? So questions like, some actual data on how are we supporting people if they have challenges and hardships while still being and enforcing compliance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also had a question, and I don't know, Chris, if you can answer this, but our code enforcement representatives that are out in the community, are they reflective of our community? So are they diverse like our community? Because I know oftentimes, when somebody is approached about something that they need to do to their home, there is a lot of apprehension. If it's not somebody that looks like them or are familiar to them or they can connect to. So I don't know if you can answer that or not.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Yeah, I can, because I know all the code officers. So yeah, to some extent, we have men and women code officers, and we have those that present as white, and we have those that present as African American. Beyond that, I don't know what to say. Maybe it'd be a good question for them. Sure.
Thank you.
That's a valuable perspective. Thank you, Jen. We had the same question come up when we did the equity audit for the police department, right? Because I think the same thing exists, is there's a power dynamic, and if we're trying to create bridges and relationships, that is a lot easier lift when the staff are representative of the community.
Yes, Joe Hooper. I agree with Chris as chairing one of the neighborhood planning councils. A lot of time was devoted to code and code enforcement and the regulations. So I think more knowledge about the different aspects of that job, I think, is very important. Instead of people receiving a ticket or a summons, well, I won't say a summons, but receiving information and then finding out about the different things, I think would be better. The major complaint that we saw as far as the community goes was they wasn't aware of something. And so they receive a complaint from a neighbor, and then they get a visit from the code compliance. So, but I think general knowledge about all, especially in the NPC2s, would be good, beginning with us. Thank you, Chris. Good idea. Plan.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that it might be helpful for this group in support of the NPCs that have just now relaunched, to help code figure out a way to bring information to the NPCs that would allow them to understand the scope of their work, their impacts, their intent, and maybe gather some feedback. Would that be helpful?
Well, a code officer attends every NPC. NPC meetings are attended by code officers. So you have a neighborhood code officer who actually goes. They actually have, NPCs have really good working knowledge of how code enforcement works.
Okay.
They interact with code enforcement monthly. They received reports of all code issues in their neighborhood. They have a question and answer period at every single NPC meeting. They're probably, if this group is looking at is code enforcement equitable is probably a deeper dive that actually could maybe bring some information to NPCs. That's kind of my point, is that we could end up covering a lot of ground in this group that actually gets covered every single month at NPC meetings all over the city. And those NPC members know more than most of us, except for Pastor Joe, who is definitely an expert. Yeah, I mean, they're going to know more than we do. So, but on that aspect, we could jump in there and take a look at it. So,
I like that. I don't know that this requires us to vote, other than to if there's a suggestion specifically on next steps, so that we're really clear. Chris, I know this puts you in an interesting position because you do wear both hats, right? So
Yeah.
you're the opportunity for you to kind of work with me and with Kiona on, coordinating what does that look like? How do we create this learning experience between us and code in the coming months? And I'm not suggesting it has to be next month, because I'm not sure how quickly we can make this happen, but putting this on our actions for sure.
I think it can happen fairly quickly. I did have a conversation with a code enforcement and the community services director, and the inspections. I looped in inspections as well. I mean, the other managers in my department just said, hey, this would be great. I just felt like getting the context, like getting the context right first, so that we did, and so that they were coming in, and then making sure that we set up a process that was going to be maybe do something new for them or productive, and then brought the insights that we might bring to this conversation to bear. A little prep work I thought was a good idea. So then,
Yeah.
And I think I'm proud of our code enforcement when you compare it to other cities. We do a lot of things right. We've got a lot of room for improvement as well. So, and I think they approach it with the same mindset. So there's a lot to be gained from having this conversation.
So what I'd like to do is ask anybody who'd be interested in joining Chris and I in a small work group to develop that kind of facilitation guide for this engagement. Just email me. You can put your name in the chat too, I suppose. Alicia could grab it that way. And we will meet sometime in the coming weeks virtually to put that together, utilizing this document that Chris has shared and any other knowledge. The other thing I just want to lift up is that as you're out in community and you're hearing things, encourage folks to participate in the neighborhood planning councils. The information about those is available on the city site. And if people really do have questions, that's where they can go and get them answered very directly. They'll have access to a code staff member if they're in attendance each month. And I know that doesn't cover yet the entire community though, Chris, right? Aren't there a couple NPCs that are not yet operational?
Yeah, so they're just now reconstituting themselves, and they won't have normal business until November. But if you went to an October meeting, or tonight there's a meeting in the Fremont McKinley area, you'd be welcome. There'd be a little bit, it wouldn't have normal business, but they're looking for new members. Yeah.
Okay. Just another way to engage and get folks who are struggling to understand the inner workings. I mean, not asking to put an additional burden on people who might be already struggling with things, but it is an outlet and a way for them to connect. And let's make sure that's working. All right.
Please, excuse me, Kathy, sorry, please know I don't have access to seeing any type of chat when taking minutes. So if someone would like to join that group, you could speak up, just give your name.
Okay, yeah, if you're interested in that and you know that immediately, just unmute yourself and say interested. And if you need time to think about it, you can email me and I'll make sure that Alicia knows. All right, don't all speak at once, but I'm sure that people are going to think about it overnight and we will get some volunteers. And so I appreciate that. That said, I also want to give a huge shout out to the work group that did work on the CRB survey, because we were, I think, very, very efficient in our time and really productive. And so there are things that we can do in those small spaces to really get a lot done in a small amount of time. So thank you all. All right, I don't believe we have any new business, which brings us to our community points of interest. So, we place this on our agenda each month just to keep our ears and eyes open for things that the city might need to be paying attention to, or that we may want to be paying attention to. So I will leave it there and see if anyone has anything to share. And Jen, I know you're going to have to leave us soon. Please let us know, and thank you for being here.
I have something that was just brought to my attention late last week, actually, through a realtor. And I don't know what the solution is. And so anyway, he's a local realtor, and he said in the city of Battle Creek, and he said it's only within the city limits in his experience. It's not in Marshall and Emmett Township and Penfield and all these other areas, just within the city limits. That the way that it stands currently, Family A sells their home. They have a closing at 4 p.m. Family B buys said home. Family B cannot get their water turned on at the new home until they visit City Hall with the deed in their hand, proving that they own the property, which now means Monday. Because the closing was at 4, City Hall is now closed. It is now the weekend, and they're trying to move in with no utilities. With that being said, if they have a job, there's another problem posed because they now have to go to work Monday morning. So what he said is happening is people are trying to do this with no water access to their home. Some homeowners that are selling the home out of a courtesy will keep the utilities on over the weekend, but in a lot of cases they won't, because they don't know these people that are buying the home. And in essence, it's their bill for the weekend, you know, just adding on to what they already owe the city. And so that is creating a huge hardship, he said. And he said the city of Battle Creek is the only place that does it this way. And he said it's terrible for new homeowners. So I had no idea that's how it was. I don't remember when I bought my house. I live within the city limits, and I don't remember when I bought my house. It's been too long ago now. I couldn't tell you. But so just to bring that to the table, I'm not sure why that is. I'm not sure if that's a changeable thing or not. I just feel like it's from his perspective, and maybe from a new homeowner, you know, that's a hardship. And does it deter people from looking within the city limits based on little things like that that maybe could be changed or looked at? So that's what I've got this week.
All right, thank you, Dina. So we will take this issue back, and I can talk to Ted about it. And what I find out, I'll make sure I share back with the board. My daughter just bought a house and experienced the same thing. I don't know if all closings are on Fridays, but hers was. And the sellers actually kept the utilities on for her. But it is something that I just saw another thumbs up by a board member that so for us to understand why, so that we can be really good advocates for the city if that's the case, or we can push back on the system and say, is there a different way to do this?
Right, agreed.
So, yeah, it's creating hardship and could also, as you said, Dina, create some unnecessary resistance to people wanting to buy in the city if that's an issue.
Sure. Thanks.
All
Thank
right.
you, Dina. Just wanted to add, with you raising that up to the city folks, Commissioner Wilson, tenants that are renting properties have the same issues with it, them being required to bring their lease down, and it becomes a huge inconvenience, especially if they work first shift, compared to them being able to just electronically or digitally handle, for example, electricity, SIMCO, all of that. So, and they were coming from Detroit and said they do not have that issue in Detroit. They're able to handle everything electronically. So, not sure if we're leaning towards that, if that's something that's a work in progress, being more modern, up to date with utilizing the technology we have accessible to us to reduce or prevent this inconvenience. But thank you so much for raising.
Thank you, Kiona. Anyone else have anything they're hearing out there that they think is germane to this board that we'd want to share with the city?
I would just share, you know, over the last year, we've been working on increased outreach to the Hispanic Latino community, and which has included, you know, we started a lead poisoning awareness campaign. So the websites and all the materials around that are the click of a button can be translated into Spanish or Burmese, and a lot of our materials, and we're revamping our office so that it has a lot of information about our programs on the outside of our office. We're now located really close to the front door, so it's information will be facing, like, everyone who walks in the door is going to see it. And from now on, we've made a decision, instead of having materials available in Spanish, we're just going to start having all of our materials have Spanish in them. So we're just going to present all information because we have had such a problem adequately serving the Hispanic and Latino community. They've been so underrepresented in all of the city's housing programs for decades. And we benchmark all of that, so we know that the population may be 6 or 7% of the population. The high water mark for us was we served 3% of the population, I think in 2016 or 17. And typically we only serve about 1 or 2% of the population. And when you think about need, Hispanic or Latino families are overrepresented in the population of housing cost burden families. So really we should be seeing a higher percentage. And so we've just decided all of our materials for at least the lead programs to start, and probably the minor home repair program, are just going to be English and Spanish side by side, everything that we do. So, and that's kind of fun because it's like changed the culture of the way we think and do things. We feel like being right at the front of City Hall, that's going to change, it's going to affect the way people think about City Hall in general, right? And we've already seen, we have 2 bilingual staff that are trained as interpreters on our staff now. One was Michelle Salazar, who did the interpretation on behalf of VOSIS for our last meeting. That it's dramatically changed the game. That, because VOSIS has someone who's been promoting some of the changes at City Hall. We've got so many folks coming through now that speak Spanish and are now accessing services that it's been a real game changer for us. So we're excited about the direction of that. We now have 9.5% of all folks that have accessed our minor home repair program since January are Hispanic or Latino. 11% of all applications to the minor home repair program, and 17% of all applications to the lead abatement programs are Hispanic or Latino. So we're seeing some results in terms of who's accessing services. And then just the last thing I would add is it's not all good news. I mean, this is sort of good news as well, but there's a lot to it. Like, that's not easy. And just because you're serving people now that you weren't serving before doesn't mean that you know how to do it well. And so we're also learning how we need to change our processes and do things differently in order to do those services well. How do we create the feedback loop so that we're hearing from folks about how we can do it well, and how do we really be accountable? And it's not easy. I think we're all feeling this discomfort.
Yeah.
And just having to remind ourselves that's appropriate, right? It's appropriate that we feel uncomfortable right now. We're changing things up. So, so hopefully we'll learn how to do those things well and do better.
I appreciate that. And Commissioner Herring, I'll get to you in a second. I just want to lift up that I think what your department, Chris, is doing well is that there was no public mandate for you to shift what you're doing. There's no equity audit that's saying, here's the action plan and the next steps, but you are living into that statement about being an equitable and accessible organization. I think the reorganizing of City Hall so that you are more forward facing makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have thought about that, but that could be a huge game changer for people. I mean, even thinking about what your department is called, is it a welcoming, kind of thing, or is there, ways for us to be thinking about those barriers that may not feel super tangible, but can be, right? And I'll just give an example. We, in early childhood, do a ton of work around trying to get families connected to childcare subsidies. And when we talk to families, they hate the word subsidy. There are many who avoid it simply because of the language. Like, you call it a scholarship, they'll sign up all day long. You call it a subsidy, it feels like a handout, and they don't want to be part of that. So I mean, what we say and what we call ourselves and what we name things matters. And so, just being thoughtful and about that is something I just encourage. Commissioner Herring?
Thank you. I just wanted to let everyone know Whitney had to take an emergency call, and she asked me to let you know she had to jump off real quick.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, I think what Chris is lifting up for me too is how important it might be for us to be thinking about what are those critical areas within the city that we could benefit from knowing more about. Like where are they in their process of learning, of creating feedback loops so that they know the impact of what they're doing? Are there things specific that we're hearing, like from this water billing issue or the water turn on, that we might be able to bring back to them in support of strengthening the city services, not just being critical, right? Like being able to present the information as a feedback loop in a way that is going to be productive. And so be thinking about that as you're out in the community hearing things. Like, are there appropriate ways to direct folks to a neighborhood planning council if that's appropriate? Are there ways to empower folks to be their own advocates in there? But bring that information back here too, because I do think that we collectively, I mean, that is our charge, right? Is how do we bring those folks in to have those conversations? And they don't need to be gotcha moments. They need to be done, thoughtfully and strategically so that we can be supportive. Anybody hearing anything else? I'll bring this up. I want to reach out to the Attorney General about Xavier West's case. We have not heard anything recently. I saw the Attorney General at the Pride Parade and asked her about it, and she said it was an active case on her desk. Was that July, Dina? Yeah, so I mean, it's been a couple months and we haven't heard anything. I don't know if city staff have, but I would like to, as chair of this board, seek out an update, and I will bring that back or share anything I learn with the group. I'm walking this path of not knowing what's appropriate for my role, but it feels like this is a big one, and I don't want to just have it be that it's something that happened a year ago and we're not doing anything about it, right? So I will keep you posted on anything I learn. Anybody have anything else? All right. I'm going to assume that means that we can move on. So do we have anybody online for public comment?
Eric, do we have anybody in the waiting room?
No one in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you. Board comments. Is there anything that anyone wanted to share with the group that they haven't had a chance yet to share? Well, I will let folks know that I have decided, many of you may already know this, to not run for re-election for the commission. I know that is disappointing to some, maybe happy to others. I'm not sure where things land. I know that it's the right decision for me right now in my life though, but I will maintain my being chair of this board, not going anywhere. I will continue being with you. And so, yeah, I'm committed. And I know that might be a question looming in people's minds, that if I'm no longer on the commission, would I still be this? But I've been asked to continue being board chair, and I happily accepted. So thank you for your support. I saw some of the clapping. Thank you. All right, well, I'm not going to belabor these things. Our next meeting is October 19th. And you've got a few action items that I look forward to connecting with you about between now and then. But we will be meeting 4 o'clock virtually again, same place, same time. And until then, I wish you all a fond farewell and enjoy this what might be the last warm evening for a little while. All right, take good care. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Mommy, I still